Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Much love guys. Now today's first story comes from the Bridezilla's subreddit and it says, Mum changed wedding cake behind my back and doesn't know that I know. My fiance and I get married this fall, and the cake has been a huge point of contention with my mum. Long saga, but the gist is that we wanted a dessert bar or cheesecake instead of a traditional cake. My mum initially insisted on having a small cake for just us to cut. We compromised and got quotes. Right before we put a deposit down, she decided that having just a cake for us and not for guests is tacky, so we needed to get a sheet cake to serve as well. We were annoyed because she was the one to suggest it. So we cut our losses and opted to a tiered cheesecake and mini cheesecakes as we originally wanted. My mum would not let this go for the past 6 months. She then decided to focus on pushing for a groom's cake. My fiance did not want one. When I told her this, she said it's really only a groom's cake in name and not about what he wants. I told her a firm no, multiple times because she wouldn't give up. That brings us to this week. I got a text yesterday saying she was at a bakery and paid for the order. I got suspicious because I never included her in those communications. I called the bakery today and was told by a very apologetic employee that my mum had added a multi-tiered groom's cake with different fillings, flowers, the whole kit and caboodle. I love a kit and caboodle. We still have cheesecake, but I feel like it'll look silly next to what is essentially a wedding cake. My question now is, what do I do? She doesn't know that I know. I'm furious and hurt. Obviously, it's just a cake, but it's not really about that now. She went behind my back and crossed multiple boundaries after I told her no. Am I being a bridezilla for not letting her have her traditional wedding cake? Nope. She absolutely does not get what she wants. You start this is just a suggestion from other stories that we've seen, like put passwords on various vendors that you talk to. So she can't go around changing plans and tell her she needs to cut this shit out immediately or she's out. It's as simple as that really. That controlling behavior isn't going to stop at just that bloody cake. It's going to go into other things once she gets what she wants. Like you said, it's not about the cake. It's about control. Stemo says, why should she have a cake at your wedding? If you don't want cake, just change the order back and call it a day. And add a password for all your vendors moving forward, so changes can't be made without it. Opie replied saying everyone I've spoken to has either been in the camp of, well, they're paying for the wedding, or not her wedding, not her cake. I think that's why I'm torn, because yes, they are paying, but changing the order behind my back? I'm more upset about the violation of trust than the actual cake, I think. Another commenter replies saying, it is not just a cake. It's a breach of your boundaries and your wishes. Cancel her order. Put a password on all your wedding accounts. You're not marrying her. You're marrying your partner. OP says exactly. It's a breach of trust that's been the most upsetting. I need to call back tomorrow and see if it's possible to cancel and get a refund, since she paid in full. I suspect she did that intentionally, thinking she was just being so clever. Tropics and Caffeine says, ask the bakery to convert the cake into a traditional cheesecake and mini cheesecakes. Maybe a smaller groom's cake that looks nothing like a wedding cake. Do not tell her you did this. When you go to the bakery, have a password put on the order so it cannot be changed after you make the appropriate changes. She thinks she's got something over on you. If she does check on it, the password will stop her from making any other changes. If she shows up at the venue with yet another cake, instruct the people at the venue to put it in the bag and not bring it out. Opie replies saying thanks for the advice. Having the cake changed to more cheesecakes is a good idea. Never in a million years did I think I'd have to become like one of the Redditors and password protect my wedding. But here we are. My Ladybit says you should have included in the original story that your parents are throwing this event, not you and your fiance. If your parents are paying, then they do have a say in what is happening. They are the host of the event, not you and your fiance. Whether you like that they are the host or not, they are. If you don't want them to host, then you and your fiance should pay. Having said all that, you and your parents will need to find a compromise, and if your mum wants a cake, then is it worth fighting about? OP says my parents insisted on paying for the wedding, despite my fiance and I being able and willing to do so. I agreed that since they're hosting, they do have a say, but I don't know. Sneaking around and changing orders is wrong to me. I think where I'm struggling is with how to address this, letting it go or having yet another conversation about it. Thanks for your comment. The commenter says cancel it, put passwords on your accounts, all of them. Discuss with your partner how you both want to handle it. It's his day too, and his preference is being ignored as well. Assuming you're not financially reliant on her, whatever you'll decide goes. If you're taking money from her, have a conversation with her to clarify if accepting her money means she expects you all to do things her way. Then discuss the next best action with your partner alone. Opie says, I agree. Another conversation is definitely needed. I need to push more this time because in previous conversations about budgets and wedding decisions, my mum has repeatedly said that it's our day and to choose what we like. Obviously, there's some sort of disconnect or miscommunication happening. And another commenter asks, are you all opposed to petite fours, spelling, and mini cheesecakes that look similar? And if anyone didn't know what petite four is, I'm sure most of you do, and I'm just clueless. But apparently, according to Google, a petite four is a small bite-sized confectionery or savory appetizer. On the images, which has just got me drooling already, it's just like a selection of lots of different like cakes, like mini ones, one person size. Look yummy. I can't stop thinking about cake now. OP says, funny you mention it. That was actually our initial plan. Mini cheesecakes and petite fours because it gave a cake option for mum and a cheesecake for us. Unfortunately, she hated the petite four idea and said it looked cheap. I wish I was making this up. And there were some other comments as well, like one of the ones in there that said about the parents having a say because they're paying for the wedding, which, you know, I don't think it's wrong to have an opinion on the matter, but I don't think paying for something doesn't give you the right to completely override the couple's wishes. And like if you're gifting money for a wedding, it's a gift, not like a control mechanism. And I think they needed to be upfront first that it gives them some control over the event if they're paying for it. From my point of view, if I was paying for the wedding, I wouldn't expect to have any kind of control over their wedding day. Suggesting ideas, being helpful, absolutely. Maybe your guests prefer this, etc. But not trying to force your way. Not in my opinion anyway. But 3 months later, OP comes in with their first update and says, hello again. A big thank you to everyone who gave advice on my original post. I'm now married and had the best, most relaxing honeymoon with my now husband, without any pesky family bothering us. By the time I posted, it was too late to cancel the wedding due to deposits and contracts, so it continued as planned. And to clarify, yes, my parents did pay for the wedding, although my husband and I made it clear several times that we did not expect or need them to pay for everything. No, I don't think them paying excuses my mum's actions. My parents reiterated that it was our wedding and we should do what we wanted. Clearly the cake was the exception to this, though she had previously said to get cheesecake if that's what we wanted. My husband and I got a laugh out of everyone's suggestions for how to handle the cake. Initially I wanted to go the petty route and surprise my mum by calling the bakery to change the cake design to something she would find tacky that would reflect my husband's hobbies. You know, like a groom's cake should do. After taking a few days to weigh my options, I knew my desire for petty satisfaction would nuke my relationship with my mum, which had truthfully never had this dynamic up until the wedding planning. I knew that she absolutely was the one in the wrong and acting like a child, and while I'm the actual child in the relationship, I wanted to be mature and handle this like an adult, if only for my own moral high ground. I communicated with my parents and listed all the reasons why this should, and others throughout the wedding planning process, was hurtful and completely out of line. Shock of the century to everyone on Reddit, I'm sure. It didn't go well. There was a series of texts I received from my mum that demonstrated she couldn't take accountability or comprehend that I wasn't mad that she ruined my wedding by ordering a cake, but rather that she went behind my back knowing it would surprise and upset me on my wedding day. I attempted multiple times to redirect to the actual issues with little success. We ended the conversation with her apologizing for a cake, making my husband and me so upset. This obviously wasn't a genuine apology or the main issue, even if she thought it was. She also agreed to move the groom's cake to a meal we had the day before the wedding, which I was fine with. At this point, we were a week out from the wedding, and thought of continuing to press the issue was too much for me to handle with everything else on my plate. I dropped the rope leading up to the wedding so I could refocus on enjoying my wedding as best as I could. I interacted with my mum as little as possible the day of, and our wedding party and coordinator did a fantastic job being a buffer. While I've had some contact with her since, it has dramatically declined so I can get some much needed space. Obviously, we'll need to have some tough conversations, but I'm choosing to spend my time with my new husband and getting back into therapy first. Weddings, man, they really bring out the crazy in people. Oh, and the cheesecakes were a huge hit, by the way. Before the next update, someone asked OP, is your mum going through change of life? I remember my mother was slightly delusional for a few years, and my children have assured me I was nicknamed the Dragon for a while. OP says yes, actually. While it doesn't excuse it, that's definitely a factor here, and why I wasn't willing to immediately blow up the relationship. Ambitious says, I wouldn't have told her about the cake and wait to see her reaction when the cake she changed wasn't the one in the wedding. OP says we were really tempted to do this because it would have been so satisfying. Ultimately, I just didn't want to escalate things even further and risk being stressed on my wedding day. It would have been entertaining though. Landerson says, it will likely rear its head again if and when you talk to her about respecting your parenting boundaries, if that's a thing you plan on doing. OP says, oh, absolutely. The lack of respect in boundaries and breaking trust for future life events was actually something I pointed out in our conversation. She didn't seem to understand the point I was making, just kept going back to the cake and not the deeper issue. And after a year after the original post, OP comes in with another update and says, I'm back with a 1-year update on how my mum changed my wedding cake order without me knowing. People have reached out for an update, and coincidentally, I've had several friends get engaged who have similar family dynamics as mine. I've shared all of this with them, but I feel the need to blast this out online too. Now that I'm a year out, I can acknowledge that I love my husband and our life together, but having a traditional wedding was a big mistake. When I think back on our wedding day, I'm devastated to admit that the few emotions I remember from that day were not how much I love my husband and excitement over our future together, but anxiety over my mum and whether shit was about to blow up. If you're recently engaged and have difficult family relationships or aren't completely sold on shelling out a ton of money on a wedding, please let this be yet another loud voice yelling at you. Elope. Have a courthouse wedding. Don't invite problematic guests. Do whatever you want to do, but for the love of God, avoid that family drama at all costs. I wish I would have stuck to what I originally wanted, eloping somewhere abroad, but alas, I made my decision and have to accept it. What I didn't mention in my initial post was that my relationship with my mum immediately and irrevocably changed as soon as I became engaged. Even though I knew she could be a lot, I had no idea what I was in for. If I could do it all again, I would have stopped that wedding planning train in its tracks after the first few signs of craziness. The cake was unsurprisingly just the last straw of craziness that happened. Greatest hits include telling literally, and I mean literally, everyone that she knew we were getting engaged, less than 10 minutes after my husband told my parents he'd planned to propose. Upon sharing the proposal photos with her, commenting on how big I looked in the photos, which are to this day ruined for me, told a family member who commented on how beautiful I looked at a pre-wedding event. Yeah, well, she's gained a lot of weight. Tried to crash my first look the day of my wedding and acted hurt that she wasn't invited. Did crash my first look and threw a fit when my wedding coordinator wouldn't let her in. Made the wedding all about her. Made the wedding all about how she never had a say in anything and that I was the controlling, immature one. We do still have contact today, but it's limited, and I'm very guarded with what I choose to share. She never genuinely apologized or acknowledged the stress and hurt she caused. Short of some major changes on her part, I don't see that happening. So yeah, moral of the story is to absolutely soak up the fresh excitement of getting engaged. But seriously, ask yourself if there's anyone in your life who will make wedding planning hell on earth. If you're also fortunate to have a character like that, have a plan to handle it and be prepared to enforce those boundaries. And for the extra crazy families out there, maybe just elope. Good incident, says the OP, so your mum won in the end. How disappointing all 3 posts were. I bet you regret not going the petty route and changed the cake. Your relationship with your mum changed anyways. Might as well have been petty. Opie says, meh. I do think seeing her face when she realized I changed the cake to something outrageous would have been hysterical. But I don't regret taking the high road, if only for my own self-righteousness. Top Put says, there is none. There is the OP who did nothing and had no new interactions after her mum got her way. Getting busy giving Reddit the life advice which she herself did not and would not follow. This is not an update so much as it's her processing her regret over the waste of time and money her wedding was. Opie says fair enough. I've seen so many couples recently who are having issues with family very early on in wedding planning, so I wanted to share how 1 year later my family relationships are horrible because of one day, and it personally wasn't worth it to me. Yes, I regret not handling it earlier on and picking up on those red flags. Hindsight is 20/20 and life can be more complicated than what's on paper. And this was posted like on the best of Redditor updates. And then OP found that post and made their own comment on that post and said, OP here. Weird seeing my post pop up. I'm seeing this comment a lot. I think a lot of people assume I did absolutely nothing. In reality, I, A, confronted my mum directly about her going behind my back and breaking boundaries and trust. B, told her the cake absolutely would not be served at the wedding. C, went very low contact and put up hard boundaries about what I would and would not be sharing about my life. I guess I find these comments interesting because the advice I received on my original post was mostly to either pay for the wedding myself, cancel the wedding, at that point it was too late, get revenge by changing the cake order to something crazy, decided to be the bigger person and not go that route, or confront my mum, what I did do. None of that advice would have prevented any of the regret I have, which is entirely about not going with my initial gut feeling / plan to elope. Absolutely not saying I handled everything perfectly. I'm young, coming to terms in therapy with some controlling behaviors I thought were normal growing up, and trying to learn so I can be better in the future. Gotten a lot of messages from folks who have family members just like my mum, who said this resonated. But I know many will also disagree with my approach / not get the point of my third post. Such is life, and Reddit. Just thought I'd share. And there was a few comments about, the disappointment with how it all ended, but I personally disagree. And it started off about cake, but it turned into OP learning about the controlling behavior that she once thought was normal, right? We often talk about this, especially when people get called, spineless or whatever. In some cases, it might be, but I always like to think about the normalization of the behaviors that they've seen growing up, growing up with controlling parents, which you often don't see the red flags until someone else is pointing them out to you. That's just how we learn. And I didn't see her advice as about eloping as just about avoiding drama. It's about protecting yourself when you're still learning to enforce those boundaries with the people that's normalized everything around you. I was incredibly happy for Opie in the end, that although it's shit what happened, right? It's absolutely shit, but she's focused on understanding the patterns rather than regretting not being more petty. Sometimes the most important thing is seeing the dysfunction in family behavior sometimes that are accepted as normal. I've just seen too much normalization of crazy shit where I grew up, But what do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And just a huge thank you for being here today, getting involved in the stories. Your love, your support, your time, it always means the absolute world to me. Please keep being awesome, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, and much love.